Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're taking a journey into the court system. It's a place where these grand ideals of law and justice slam right into the messy, complicated, and very human reality of how things actually work.
So this is the big question, all right? This is what we're really digging into today. It's a question that forces us to look past the fancy legal language and see how the system truly functions for different people. I want you to keep this question in the back of your mind as we go through this.
All right, so before we can even start to tackle that huge question, we need to get our bearings. Think of it like this. You can't really analyze a system if you don't know the layout, right? So let's start with the basic map of justice.
So here in the US, we have what's called a dual court system. And honestly, it's pretty straightforward. You've got your state courts. They're the real workhorses handling the vast majority of cases. Traffic tickets, local crimes, that kind of thing. Then you have the federal courts. They step in for the really big stuff, cases that involve national laws or even the Constitution itself.
Okay, so we have the map. Now, let's meet the people who actually make the decisions. Because a courtroom isn't just some abstract place, right? It's an arena, and the choices made by a few key players can literally change the entire course of someone's life. First up, you've got the prosecutor. Now, these folks represent the government, and you cannot overstate how much power they have. The key word to remember here is discretion. They get to decide if you're even charged with the crime, what that charge is going to be, and if they're going to offer you a deal to avoid a trial. These choices literally set the stage for everything that follows.
And then, squaring off against them, you have the defense attorney. Their whole job is to be in the corner of the person accused of the crime. They're like a crucial shield, making sure their client's rights are protected, and that the process is, a fair fight.
And who's watching over this whole thing? The judge. Think of them as the neutral referee. They're not supposed to pick a side. Their job is to make sure everyone plays by the rules of the law, to settle disputes, and if someone is found guilty, they're the ones who decide the punishment. So, this little chart really breaks it down nicely, doesn't it? You can see the balance of power right here. The prosecutor gets to start the whole thing. They have the power to charge. The defense attorney's power is all about protecting the client. And the judge? They hold the authority to interpret the law and deliver the final sentence. Each role is totally different and absolutely critical.
All right, so we've got the map, we've met the players. Now let's actually walk through what happens. What does the journey of a typical case look like from start to finish?
So, pretty much every criminal case follows these 4 basic steps. First, there's the arraignment. That's when the formal charges are read in court. Then you hit the pretrial phase. And trust me, this is where so much of the real action happens. If a deal isn't made there, then you go to trial, and finally, if there's a conviction, you get to the sentencing stage.
And that brings us to a really, really important point. The most critical moments, the ones that decide a person's future. They don't always happen in some dramatic trial like you see on TV. Nope. A lot of the time, they happen way before a jury even enters the room.
And that's the reality of the American justice system. The huge majority of cases never even see a trial. They get resolved through something called plea bargaining, which happens during that pre-trial stage. It's basically a negotiation, a deal made between the prosecutor and the defense, often behind closed doors. It's efficient for sure, but it happens completely out of the public eye. So that brings us right back to that big question we started with. If so much of justice is decided through these private negotiations and the personal discretion of the players, what other things, besides just the facts and evidence, might be tipping the scales?
Well, the research points to some really powerful factors at play. Things like a person's race, how much money they have, their social status, and, this one's huge, the quality of the lawyer they can actually afford. All of these things can seriously impact how a case turns out.
And look, this chart really drives that point home, doesn't it? It shows just how much representation matters. Having access to resources could mean you get a top-notch defense team that can fight the prosecution on every single point. But without those resources, you might get an overworked public defender who just doesn't have the time or the means to give your case the same attention. And that gap, well, that can lead to completely different results.
So, here's the big takeaway from all this. There's the justice system you read about in textbooks, the one with all the rules and ideals, and then there's the system that plays out in reality every single day. And understanding the huge gap between those two, that's everything.
And this idea really gets to the core of it all. It's this idea that justice isn't just about what the law says. It's about how the system actually delivers that law. The process itself. Is it fair? Is it equal? Those questions are just as important as the laws written on the books. And so that leaves us with this one last, really challenging question to chew on. If the process itself isn't equal, if the journey through the court system is wildly different depending on who you are, can the outcome, the final verdict, ever truly be called just? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.